Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into something pretty special? We're talking the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Ooh, a classic.
More than just giant balloons, though, right? There's a whole backstory of innovation and artistry behind it.
Not to mention that fusion of cultures.
Exactly. We'll be exploring all that through Balloons Over Broadway, the true story of the puppeteer of Macy's Parade.
By Melissa Sweet.
You got it.
No.
It's all right there on Goodreads, book info, fascinating reviews, and some great background on Tony Sarg.
The man who made those iconic balloons happen.
I was surprised to learn the parade actually has its roots in immigrant experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting how we associate it so strongly with Americana now.
But the Goodreads page says it started as a way for Macy's employees, many of whom were immigrants, to celebrate their own traditions.
Exactly, and that was during a time when anti-immigrant sentiment was pretty high.
So for Macy's to embrace that
And even showcase the cultures of its immigrant employees.
through this parade, pretty remarkable.
Speaks volumes about their commitment to inclusivity.
Which has thankfully become a hallmark of the parade.
Absolutely.
Makes you think about how it's evolved from those early days to the global spectacle it is now.
Right at the heart of that evolution is Tony Sarg.
The man behind those incredible balloons.
Yeah.
The Goodreads reviews paint him as this endlessly curious figure.
A real tinkerer.
There's this great anecdote about him as a kid.
Tuh.
Rigging up this system to feed his chickens on cold mornings without leaving his warm bed.
Classic Sarg.
That really sums up his spirit, doesn't it? That blend of playfulness and ingenuity.
That's key to understanding his creative process.
Like his childhood curiosity laid the groundwork for the marionettes.
And then eventually those massive parade balloons.
It's fascinating how his passion for marionettes actually paved the way for the parade.
He didn't just create those amazing puppets.
He brought them to life on a grand scale with Macy's Wondertown.
Those elaborate window displays for Macy's.
I wonder if those were like a testing ground for the parade.
That's an interesting thought.
What do you think drew him to working on such a large scale?
Well, the reviews highlight his passion for figuring out how things worked.
Not just on a small scale either.
No, how to translate those mechanisms to create movement and life on a grand scale.
The challenge of making the impossible seem possible.
Exactly.
So those Macy's Wondertown displays were essentially a stepping stone to the parade.
Precisely. It allowed him to experiment with scale, movement, and storytelling in public.
Captivating the city's imagination.
Like a preview of the magic he would bring to the parade.
Okay, so we've got Macy's, immigrant celebrations, and a puppeteer with a knack for spectacle. How did these elements converge into the first parade in 1924?
Well, the first parades were quite different from what we see today.
Really?
They started with live zoo animals.
Oh, wow.
Turns out those animals were a bit much for the younger spectators.
You think?
Yeah, so they needed something more engaging.
Something to capture the kids' wonder and imagination.
That's where Tony Sarg and his giant puppets come in.
His giant puppets.
Yeah, he proposed these fantastical animal puppets, essentially giant marionettes controlled from below.
Upside-down marionettes.
He called them that, initially filled with air.
I can't even imagine trying to maneuver those through the city streets.
It was a logistical feat, but Sarg quickly recognized the need for a more practical solution.
He wanted them to be even more visible.
Yeah, to achieve greater height for the crowds.
So he needed something lighter than air. This is where helium comes in.
Yes. That switch to helium marked a pivotal moment,
It let the balloons truly soar.
transforming the parade into the spectacle we know today.
And to think it all started with a puppeteer's vision.
It did. It's amazing how a puppeteer's vision turned into this global spectacle.
And it's not just the scale, it's the cultural impact too. This parade is synonymous with Thanksgiving for so many.
That evolution from a celebration for Macy's employees to a national tradition.
It's fascinating.
It really says a lot about our desire for shared experiences.
Especially in a country as diverse as the United States. And those giant balloons have transcended their original purpose.
They've become cultural icons.
Absolutely. It's interesting how their designs have reflected trends in pop culture.
Oh, definitely.
You can almost trace a visual timeline of American pop culture through the parade's history.
Like, what kind of examples are you thinking of?
Well, in the early days, you had simpler characters
Right.
like Felix the Cat, very much of their time.
And then as the parade gained popularity,
You started seeing more licensed characters.
like Mickey Mouse.
Snoopy, reflecting the rise of mass media and character merchandising.
And more recently,
Think SpongeBob?
oh yeah,
even popular music artists.
So the balloons become these reflections of what was capturing the public's imagination.
What's interesting is the parade has always been more than just the big balloon characters.
Yeah.
It's got the marching bands, the performers, the elaborate floats,
It offers something for everyone.
creating a sense of inclusivity that goes beyond the balloons.
I think you can trace that back to Sarg, too.
To his vision of bringing people together through spectacle.
And shared experience.
It makes me wonder how the logistics have evolved.
Of putting on such a massive spectacle.
Yeah, maneuvering those giant balloons through New York City.
Especially as they've gotten bigger and more elaborate.
Can't be easy.
You're right, it's a monumental undertaking.
With a whole team behind the scenes,
Engineers and balloon handlers.
making sure everything runs smoothly.
And safely, especially with those wind conditions.
That was my next thought. The wind in New York City must be a constant challenge.
It's like this incredibly complex dance they have to do.
Accounting for the wind, the street obstacles, traffic lights.
And of course, the size of the balloons themselves.
They've even developed those netting systems.
To control them in case of sudden gusts.
It really makes you appreciate the expertise and artistry.
In every aspect of the parade.
It really is incredible to think about all the work behind the scenes bringing this parade to life. I imagine there have been a lot of challenges as the parade has grown.
Oh, absolutely. From the materials for the balloons to the technology to inflate and maneuver them, the parade has always been on the cutting edge. Even the helium itself has been a challenge.
Helium. How so?
Well, it's a finite resource, right? And there have been shortages.
Really?
Yeah, that threaten to impact the parade.
Wow.
So the organizers have had to get creative,
Like what?
experimenting with different gases or adjusting the sizes of the
To
balloons.
conserve the helium?
Exactly. It's a delicate balance. Maintaining the spectacle, but also being mindful of those resources.
It's interesting how the parade has had to adapt to more than just changing cultural trends.
Right. Practical considerations, too.
Makes me wonder what Tony Sarg would think of the parade today. Would he recognize his vision?
I think he'd be amazed by how far it's come, but still see that heart of his vision.
He was a true innovator after all.
Always pushing the boundaries.
I bet he'd be thrilled to see how the parade has embraced new technologies and creative approaches.
While staying true to that core idea.
Of bringing joy and wonder to people of all ages.
Exactly.
It's almost like each new generation discovers the parade for the first time.
Experiencing that same awe and excitement.
And that's what's so special about it.
Mhm.
The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade connects us to that shared sense of wonder.
And celebration.
So well said. Wrapping up our deep dive into the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, it's clearly so much more than just a parade.
It really is.
It reflects our history, culture, and that capacity for creativity.
And innovation.
And reminds us that even as the world changes, there's still room for that magic.
That wonder.
Especially when we celebrate together.
Couldn't agree more.
So this Thanksgiving, as you watch those giant balloons float by,
Think of Tony Sarg.
the visionary who brought them to life,
And maybe
you'll feel inspired.
to create a little magic of your own.
Happy Thanksgiving.